Well, hello and welcome. My name is Mitch Guthrie, and this is the Long Letter Podcast. And this episode's guest is Leah Rader. Leah, say hi.
Hi.
So, Leah, I know you by extension of other people. Your friend Brooke was on this podcast, very first episode, actually. She was the inaugural podcast. She's here in the corner of the room. Recently had kind of seen the work that you did for the Christmas meal, and we'll get to that. But I was excited to hear that you wanted to be on the podcast, and so here we are. So let's just start, just introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
My name is Leah Rader. I am 36. I am married with 3 children. Yeah, that's me.
All right. And so, this podcast, there's been multiple things that have been discussed on it right now as we do interviews. The most critical thing is just getting people's stories out there to humanize kind of the experiences that others might not understand. That's focused primarily around homelessness, addiction. We're going to do some mental health stuff here in the future. And so your particular story was one of addiction, and I believe you went through a drug court program, the drug court program at Lewis County.
Yes, I did.
And so before we get to that, though, let's start with your home life. What was your kind of upbringing? Kind of give people an idea of, where you're coming from, and then we'll...
Okay. So I grew up in Lakewood, Washington with my mom and my dad and my twin brother. Super normal childhood, played soccer. I was a little defiant. I didn't like rules.
So you were a kid.
I was a kid, yes. Okay. I moved here when I was 16 because I didn't like my parents' rules, which they were just normal rules. But my grandma lived in Adna. So I moved here and lived with her for a while. And it wasn't like I didn't have a bad childhood. Everything seemed pretty normal. After I had my daughter, I was 19 when I had her. That is when things kind of started getting rough for me. And I can't think of any particular reason why. I wasn't really grieving anything. I wasn't mad at anything. I didn't have trauma, really. But that's when I started using.
At 19?
At 19, yes.
And how old was your child?
She was around 1.5 when things started getting bad. Her dad and I split up. But I was kind of dabbling before that. So I don't think it was because him and I split up. And then my family realized how bad I was, and they took her. So she lived with her Nana, and I was still allowed to see her and everything. And they, get treatment, and you can have her back. And she was never taken away, legally taken away. But I didn't fight for her either because I knew that I was not doing good.
But your family stepped in.
Yes.
And you were working within that because you realized your state.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, and I'm just asking out of curiosity, did any sort of postpartum play a part in that? Or?
I don't think so. I think that I just started dabbling, and since I'm an addict, we can't dabble.
Right.
Yeah. So then it, the addiction just took on full force.
Okay. And so when you were, in this, you say the dabbling thing, and was there a point where dabbling turned into actual problem?
Yes.
Was it quick? Did it take time?
I guess I dabbled in my early teens, not early teens, later teens. And it never became an issue. I'd go to a party, drink a beer, smoke a joint, take a pill, but I didn't need to do it the next day. But once I was, 19, 20, then it became something that I wanted to do more, and I wanted to do more. And then I just, I felt like I was fine doing it. I had a job and I was doing fine for a while. And then it just,
And you were able to, at least for a part of this, maintain, functioning. Like I say that, like some people that struggle with alcoholism, they're high functioning alcoholics. They can still hold a job and do this and this. Would you say that's where you were? Or
I maintained for about a year, and then it took over. My weight loss was significant, and that's when my family started noticing. Then I was missing work because I couldn't get what I needed to feel well. So maybe a year I was like functioning in my mind. I probably really wasn't.
In your family, I'm hearing that your family seems to really care about you.
Oh, yes.
It's not like you were abandoned by your family.
No, I wasn't. My aunt actually works for CPS, and she was the one that showed up at my house and was like, look, we're taking Layla because you're using. So, yeah, and they've always been supportive, but there's only so much they can do.
Right. And that probably gave her the tools to recognize where to step in and how to help or
for sure.
protect your daughter as well as.
It was either she came and did it or there was a report made.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the feeling, the agreement? Like when you said, okay, go ahead, like, did you have?
In my mind, I went and signed up for treatment that day. Did I go to treatment? No, because I wanted to just keep using.
Oh, so you had talked yourself into this as like, this is my wake up call.
Yep.
But then you did not wake up.
I did not wake up. No, not for a long time.
And your family, it's ideally if CPS has to step in, they try to find family members to house kids in that situation. Your family stepped up and did that. What kind of stressors did that put on the family? Were you aware of that? Were you like completely out of?
So she stayed at my aunt's house for about a week, and then she went to live with her Nana, her dad's mom. And her dad had his own apartment at the time, but he would go see her regularly, and I would go see her too. But she lived at her Nana's for several years. And then her dad ended up moving back in with his mom, so he was there with her. And then when she was around 5, I got clean. That's the first time I got clean, and I was able to get her back. I shared her with her dad.
And did the father also struggle with
No.
anything like that? Okay. So, and you were split before you kind of took your dive into that?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like there was like a 3 or 4 year period there where you were in, I don't know what you'd call it, active addiction or
Yes.
whatever. So that's a chunk of time, being a mom and for your child. What happened in that intervening time where you eventually said, okay, I got to make the effort here. I have to try.
So there was about 2 years that I didn't speak to her or any of my family. I got pregnant with my son. Excuse me. I got pregnant with my son and used for 7 months of that pregnancy and was homeless for that 7 months as well. We had another family member in the Tri-Cities, and she said, you can't be homeless and have this baby. So we moved to the Tri-Cities, and I got clean. And then, excuse me. And then I stayed clean for, gosh, my memory is bad, for probably about 5-6 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was when we moved back from the Tri-Cities that I was clean. My son was probably a year old. And that's when I started getting to have my daughter back.
So these things usually don't occur in isolation, both the addiction part of it as well as the getting clean recovery part of it. What was your, did you have friends that were, what I'm hearing is like when you had to move, was that to get out of maybe a group of friends or get out of a social circle that wasn't healthy for you? Or is that how you got into it? Like,
I moved because we had nowhere to live. And so we were offered to stay in the Tri-Cities with this family member. And that's why we moved. And there was I just stopped using. I don't know how.
like on your own without a program
Yes.
or assistance?
That time, yes, on my own. I just stopped. Once we were in Tri-Cities, I was done.
And that wasn't related to like, certain circles you ran in here versus there? Or?
At that time, before we moved, I don't really remember even hanging out with people. I was super pregnant. We lived in a vehicle. There were people we know and people we would get drugs from, but there wasn't like a group of people we hung out with. Definitely not having those people in the Tri-Cities helped, because I didn't know anybody in the Tri-Cities, so there wasn't easy access for me to find drugs. So that probably was a part of it.
Mm-hmm. So there's an aspect to it of removing yourself a little bit from known connections.
Oh, yes. I had to, yes.
And so this is another family member in the Tri-Cities that takes you in, sort of thing. You said you were in active addiction while pregnant?
Yes.
For how long of that pregnancy?
7 months of that pregnancy.
Are there any issues that arose from that? Are there? Gosh, I could cry. With my son, Trevor, no.
Seriously? He has no health issues. He's brilliant. He's amazing at sports. He's friendly. He's kind. I got blessed with that one. Once we get deeper into the story, there's another pregnancy, though.
Yeah. Well, when you go to the Tri-Cities, did your daughter come with you?
No, she didn't. She stayed here with her dad and her Nana. And then that's once I moved there was when I was able to start making contact with her again because I was clean.
Okay. And one thing I'm hearing repeatedly is how much effort your family puts in to try to help you. When you think back on that now, what does that bring up for you in terms of like how you respond to your family or how you see your family?
If it weren't for their prayers, I wouldn't be here. 100%. I wouldn't be here.
They're very active in helping you.
Mm-hmm. They never enabled me. Thank you. They never enabled me. And so for me, that was hard. I remember being in jail and them not accepting my calls. I didn't have money on my books and that bothered me, but that wasn't them ignoring me. That was them just not enabling me. And if they had enabled me, I don't know where I'd be.
Did you ever, at a point up to this point that we've gotten to, have you ever dealt with accepting responsibility for where you were, or were you in denial, or did you just kind of brush it off? Like, what was your mindset?
I think I've always been one to accept responsibility. I knew I was an addict. I knew it was my fault that I was in that position, and it wasn't my family's fault to get me out of, or responsibility to get me out of that position. I did probably play the blame game a little bit. Like, I remember on holidays messaging them like, why can't we come to dinner, and feeling, poor me, but I know why I couldn't come to dinner, Yeah. I was using.
Well, so I read your interview with the Chronicle. You're Lewis County famous now. So, but one of the things that struck me about it was that sort of recognition, like the ownership of the addiction. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of opinions out there that people have that those struggling with addiction don't accept responsibility or personal responsibility. And there's definitely a part of that they are aware of, that they are, working through. And I thought it was good that I felt that came out strongly in your interview. This sort of acceptance of where you've made mistakes. But it also didn't seem to be like covered in a bunch of like shame or guilt. You said that you've had some of that, but do you struggle with that when you look back or when you interact with, those, I would imagine those years were some kind of lost years for your kids.
Yeah.
Both for them and for you. Do you struggle with that?
I used to a lot, and I used to always look in the rearview mirror and just feel a lot of guilt. And I know that what I put them through was not okay. But because of a class I took in drug court, MRT, I was able to move past that and accept what I did and make amends for what I did. And now I know that, I can't feel guilty about that. All I can do is be the best mom I can be now. And so I've gotten over a lot of the guilt. There's things I think about that still bother me, and I can't believe I put my kids through that. My son, we didn't have power for almost a year one time.
Wow.
Because we spent money on drugs. That's a hard thing for me to deal with. I gave birth to a daughter at 24 weeks because I was using drugs, and she passed at almost 2 months old. That was a hard one for me to get over. But I have peace with that now. I have peace with the things that I've done.
You said the program in drug court was MRT?
Yes.
What does that stand for?
Moral recognition therapy. Thanks, Brooke.
That's why Brooke's here.
Yeah.
Support. Moral recognition
Therapy.
And it's about coming to terms with
It's
that.
accepting everything you've done and owning up to everything you've done and working through it.
Is that an important part of your recovery?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Did you struggle doing that? Or was it just like, yep, I accept? Or is it sometimes you return back to it and be like, I need to continually accept responsibility?
So sometimes when people take that class, they kind of cheat their way through it. It's kind of a bookwork thing, but also, I don't know how to describe it. And when I did it, I knew that I was going to make the best of it, and I was going to be completely honest with myself and with my counselor and with my peers. And so, yeah, that is really,
you get out of it what you put into it. Sort of thing.
And I got everything out of it. So it was great.
It makes me think of a C.S. Lewis quote where he talks about, we can't rewrite the beginning of the story, but we can change the ending.
For sure.
And sounds like that's kind of your mindset going forward. So back to the story. You've got a daughter, you have a son that you were in active addiction while pregnant with him up to 7 months. Now, I'm not great at math, but that leaves 2 months of what? What did that look like? What brings that?
That is when I finally started going to the doctor because I had moved.
And were you still in the Tri-Cities or did you move somewhere else now?
No, Tri-Cities. So when I was 7 months is when we moved to the Tri-Cities.
Okay.
So I started going to the doctor. I actually never told the doctor I used for fear of what would happen to my son. And he there was no complications, and he's never had complications. We moved back here when he was about 1.
Do you think the doctor knew, even though you didn't?
I'm not sure, because at that term in my pregnancy, there's not like blood work that you have to go in and do. So they couldn't see my arms. I was a healthy weight when I was pregnant with him. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I believe once you have the child, they do the blood work and all this other stuff, and then they can determine if there's drugs involved, and then that.
I think since there was that 2-month period where I was clean, that he didn't have drugs in his system, and I didn't have drugs in mine.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And he's totally fine.
Yeah, he's amazing.
So, so you're living in the Tri-Cities. You just had a baby, right? Your son. What happens next?
So we live there until he's about a year old, and then we want to come back to Centralia because my son's dad also has 2 other boys who lived in Centralia and my daughter living in Centralia. So we moved back here, and I regained my relationship with my daughter, started having her more frequently during the week.
And how old was she about?
5.
5, okay.
And my son's dad was working. Everything was, good. I started going back to school. Everything was good. Then
I can hear the then here.
Yeah. So then my grandparents, they passed away. I don't know the year, but my daughter was in kindergarten, I believe, and they passed away. It was a murder-suicide. My grandma was dying of cancer. She had a few months to live, and my grandpa didn't want to live without her and didn't want to watch her suffer. So he shot her and then shot himself.
Oh,
and
my word.
yeah, and I was extremely close with him. So then I started drinking.
Did you know this was going to happen, or did you even have a hint that this is how your grandfather would respond?
My grandma had told me a week before if she was strong enough to pull the trigger, she would. She was bedridden. She was done. I knew that once she went, I knew he would kill himself. I didn't know it was going to go down this way.
And there's nothing you can do. And so, I still imagine that it would have hit you as a shock. But you're saying that there's communication that had happened ahead of time to give you an idea of if they had their way of doing it.
That's how it would go.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
And they were pretty critical to your support, correct?
They were.
Because they're the ones that brought in your daughter.
No, different grandparents.
Okay, different grandparents, okay.
I had actually lived with them several different times throughout my teenage years. And actually, before we moved from the Tri-Cities back to Centralia, we lived with them for about 3 months. I'm their only granddaughter, and I meant the world to them. There was nothing I could do to upset them. They always supported me, always loved me. I was their girl. So I took that one pretty hard. And then my mom, that was her mom and her stepdad. She took it really hard too. So watching her downfall, that affected me as well.
So it does seem like maybe there's a shift here from dabbling in drugs to addiction to drugs to the actual, drug or alcohol use regarding trauma. You're saying that the death of your grandparents that's when you started drinking?
I started drinking very heavily.
And that's different from drinking was not your issue previously.
No.
So this is, in one sense, new territory for you.
I was completely against meth and heroin. I was not judgmental towards people who used it, but for me, I was never going to do it again. I was done with it. I was never going to do it again. So I just started drinking a little bit, and then that turned into, I was drinking like a drug addict on meth would use meth, stay out all night, not come home until I got my fix. I wouldn't just go out and drink or drink at home and then just be drunk. I don't know how to describe it.
You were out on the town.
It was bad.
And you have your son.
And my daughter.
Both of them, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in your mind, had you kind of built up this, those are those types of drugs, those are bad, and I can't do those, but alcohol is okay? Or did you also know that you were maybe going down
I knew it wasn't okay. I knew I had a problem, and I knew it wasn't okay.
And was this driven by the death of your grandparents?
I think it was. So I was pretty upset about their death. We had gone to their house to box things up and clean it out, and I received most of their things. One of those things was a couple crates of hard alcohol. That's how it started.
I don't think I've ever owned a crate of alcohol in my life.
Oh, there was, yeah.
Sorry.
Every type of alcohol in those crates. Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in a house where we had a little bar in our house, had different stuff, but I don't think I remember. And my stepdad owned a bar. So yeah, I figured we would have had a crate. Well, so you get that, and that kind of kicks off this new trial that you're going through. So what did that look like with having kids and having been in recovery? Like, what's that look like?
It looked really bad. I never had any like repercussions from that. My son's dad, I was still with him at the time. He knew it was bad. He helped with the kids. I mean, he was their dad as well, not my daughter's dad, but he, treated her like a daughter. So nothing like super bad came from that, but he had started using again, meth, and I knew it. But he was lying about it.
And he had done that previously before you'd met him, or?
Oh yes. Oh okay. Yeah. And then when I was homeless with my son, that's who I was with, and he used then as well. Okay. So he had started using again and was denying it, but I could tell. So then I said, well, if you're going to use, then I'm going to start using again too. And that got really bad. So that's when I started using meth and heroin again.
And were you also continuing in the alcoholism?
I completely stopped drinking. Once I started doing meth and heroin, I completely stopped drinking.
Were you drinking to the point where you needed to be medically assisted to come off it, or you just went cold turkey? Or?
I just went cold turkey. I don't know if it was the meth and heroin that helped me get off of it, because I was drinking pretty hardcore, but I just went from one drug to the next.
And like you said previously, that you had like a line, like, I'm not going back to that. So what was it? Your son's father going back to it? Was it
So my neighbors who also used at the time, I knew they used, but they didn't talk to me about it because I didn't.
In a culture of
yes. So they picked me up from the bar, and I was sitting at their house venting, and I said, you know what? I know that you guys use. I want to use again too. And something in my head just snapped right then and there.
What were you venting about?
My son's dad using and lying about it.
Interesting response, right? Like
yep.
To be so angry at him for starting again.
Yep.
I'm now going to go, I'll show him.
It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even make sense of it. The day before, I was completely against it.
Well, and it's not like you're completely, you've now got not only a history, but you've got this loss of grandparents. I mean, there's just even the plain old stress of raising kids is a lot. So, like you said earlier, when you're 19, you kind of dabble, you do this and that. And then it seems like as you get older, your kids are older, your life experiences are more like it becomes like a switch. It's not like a dabble. It's a like
boom,
jump in with both feet sort of thing. And so where do you go next? What's this look like?
Oh, so that looks like I continue using. I start using intravenously again. I get more into heroin than I am meth. Lose my job. I was an assistant preschool teacher or assistant to the teachers for Lewis County Head Start. I did that for a few years. Lost my job.
And was it because of the drugs that you lost the job? Or like, could they see that it was affecting your job? Like in terms of showing up?
They didn't fire me for drug use, but it was because of my drug use because I wasn't showing up.
Right.
But before that, I got pregnant, with a daughter and was still using, I wasn't using meth, but I was using heroin. and went into labor at 24 weeks. And we were in the NICU for 2 months with her. And I kept telling God every day, let her live and I'll stop. Let her live and I stop.
Make your bargain with God.
I never stopped. I used in the bathroom at the hospital every day.
Oh, man.
Every single day.
Did you bring it in with your bag? Did you have somebody bringing it to you?
So I just brought it in my purse or whatever I carried with me. She couldn't leave the NICU, obviously.
Right. But
I
over
could
those
leave.
2 months?
Yes. So we were staying, they provide like hotel type rooms for families.
Right. Yeah.
So I was staying in one of those. Since I grew up in Lakewood, like I knew the area around Tacoma as well. And so I would also just drive back here and get what I needed and then drive back there. And I used every day, every single day, even though I told God, I'll stop, let her live and I'll stop. Even as she died in my arms, I prayed to God, please, I'll stop, let her live. I didn't stop.
And I
don't even remember the ride home because I was so out of it.
She was 24 weeks?
When she was born.
So real preemie. Because I think it's 22 weeks is like the survivability drops off considerably after that. So 24 weeks, and then you guys spent 2 months in the hospital after that. And during that time, you're in active drug use. Do the doctors, nurses, anybody have an idea?
They know, yes. Because when I went into labor, I told them. I knew that they were going to give me IVs, and I knew they were going to see my arms. Mm-hmm. So I told them. So they had me drug testing daily there. I had CPS coming in and talking to me, social workers, all of it. They knew.
For 2 months, you're failing drug tests every day.
Mm-hmm. Or trying to avoid them.
Right. And so they give you the drug test. Was there a consequence from that, or was it just...
There was no consequence since I was staying there and my kids were with my son's dad here. There was no consequence for that. I mean, there would have been. I wouldn't have been able to take my daughter home from the hospital had she survived.
But you're not even thinking that. You're just... did the having the preemie, did it make your addiction worse? Like,
I think it definitely.
I know
did.
you say you're praying to God, save my daughter and I'll stop. But at the same time, it's like, I can't handle this.
The loss of a child is real hard. So yes, it definitely made my addiction worse. A few months after that, my daughter, not the one that passed, but my older daughter, her dad had moved to Colorado and he was taking her with him for the summer. And I knew that she wouldn't be coming back to me because my drug use was obvious. And my dad had told Adam, her dad, look, Leah's using, you need to keep Layla. And I didn't see Layla for 5 years. And so I had my son still with me.
Hold on 1 second.
Just need to insert a quick editorial note here. We had some technical issues that came up during the podcast, one of which is our camera died at this point in the interview. And so we had to pause the interview for a moment and address that and try to figure out what was going on. So just special thanks to Leah for being patient and for Allyson for helping me get everything back on track. Toward the end of the interview, we also had an issue with that same camera. And so if you're watching the video, you'll see Allyson trying her best to keep this camera alive until we can finish up the interview. Anyways, I just wanted to give an explanation of why there's a little bit of break here in the interview with Leah, and we will jump right back into it. So sorry for the disruption.
All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Had a little technical difficulty. Okay, so we left off. Your daughter's passed away. You're in active drug use in a hospital. What comes out of that going forward?
What came out of that was nothing good. I continued to use super hard. A few months after that, my older daughter she ended up moving to Colorado with her dad, and she was going there for the summer, but I knew that she wasn't coming back because of my drug use. I continued to use, let me think. Yeah, I lost my job. That's when I lost my job working for Head Start, was shortly after that. I wasn't showing up to work, and it just became obvious. I'm sure they knew, but I didn't lose my job for drug use. I lost it for my attendance.
The consequence of the drug use.
Yes. Yeah. And I just continued to use a couple years. Gosh, my timeline of things is off because I have a horrible memory. I knew that in order for me to get clean, it was going to take going to jail and detoxing in jail. I knew that I was not, in my mind, strong enough to detox on my own and make that decision. And so I had always, been accepting of that. Like, I'm not going to get clean until I go to jail. Well, I did go to jail. I believe it was the day after Halloween. I was shoplifting at Walmart. And the security there, they caught me, took me into their little office. I tried to lie and say that, my kid was in the car with the babysitter and I needed to go. My kid was not in the car with the babysitter. My kid was at home with his dad. But they took me to jail. And when I got to jail, they searched my property and they found heroin. And so I tried to say it wasn't mine. It was in my wallet. We all try to say things like that. It was mine, and I knew then that it was going to be a rough few weeks because I was going to detox in jail. And then that was a little over 5 years ago. They didn't give you very much to help you with detox.
Yeah, they didn't have the MAT program at the time.
They did not. So I was very sick for a couple weeks. And once I got over that sickness, I was done. I got the opportunity to be in drug court, and I was done. Had I have not detoxed fully, I would have gotten out and used. I wanted to be bailed out so that I could use. I wanted to be bailed out because Thanksgiving was coming up and I need to be with my family. I wasn't going to be with family even if I was out. But I didn't get out. I was in there for about a month and a half, I think, and then I went straight to drug court. I knew that I needed a program.
Did they talk to you about drug court, or did you go, hey, I need to be in drug court, like you voluntarily?
Officer Dickey, I believe, came in and said, do you want to do drug court? And I said, yes. So then Sam came in, the drug court attorney, and he talked to me about it and told me what that meant, what it looked like. I signed some papers, and then I was in drug court. And it wasn't a matter of doing drug court to get out of jail. I only had a few more weeks left of time.
You've already done the hard part.
Yeah. And jail's not an issue for me. I only had a few weeks left of time if I would have stayed in jail. I detoxed, and that was my big thing. And I needed to be clean, or I was going to lose my son, and never see my daughter again, or I was going to die. And I didn't want that.
And so, now if I'm remembering here, the drug court was probably a relatively new program to the county at the time, wasn't it?
I don't think it was super new. This was about 5.5 years ago, 5 years ago. So I don't think it was super new, but newer. Yes, it's come a long ways since. I think there's things that have changed, as do with every program. But yeah.
So what was your experience with drug court?
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
Allyson got you the tissues right there.
Yeah,
so you might want to preload or be ready to go.
It saved my life. I fought it in the beginning. I didn't like the rules. I was very immature. When we're in active addiction, we're very immature, and it takes growing up. for a few months before you get out of that immaturity. I fought the rules, fought the team members, not physically. I wanted to do things my way, but I needed to realize that my way doesn't work, or I wouldn't even be in drug court. After I got into phase 2 is when the drug court team sat me down because I wasn't in compliance. Showing up to group late, just being defiant. I wasn't using, I wasn't breaking the law, but I was not doing my best, and they recognized that. They sat me down, and I'll never forget that day. And that's when things changed. That's when I opened up. That's when I got real with myself. But I told myself, look, I'm going to fake it until I make it. I'm going to be the best participant they've ever seen, even though I don't want to be. And after doing that for a few weeks, everything was perfect. My life was better. My head was better. And so I didn't fake it anymore. It was real. Yeah.
So, odd situation where you want to be in the program, yet the actual, like, you know, being in the program kind of chafed the wrong way there.
I don't like being told what to do.
But it was helpful for what you needed to do, you know, and while you weren't using, was there a pride issue involved there? Because one thing that I have taken out of this is your ability to get clean on your own is actually pretty amazing. So did pride play a point where you're like, hey, I've done this before. I don't need your help.
I thought to myself, you know, this drug court manager, she's not an addict. She doesn't know. She doesn't care. She may not be an addict, but if anybody cares, it's her. I thought to myself, Officer Dickey, he was only an alcoholic. He doesn't know. He doesn't care. I was so wrong. They may not have walked in my shoes, but they care, and all they are there to do is help addicts make a life for themselves, get their families back, have their kids back. So it definitely was a pride thing.
And what you found was malicious compliance, like just, I'm going to, turned into the actual reality of working through it and doing it and taking it seriously and finding success in it.
Yes.
I've found something similar in church life where sometimes that's very loud. maybe switch and cut. There you go. Same thing. There's this idea that we're going through the motions or whatever. Sometimes when we find in that process, we find ourselves committing to it in the process of working it out, sort of thing. And I'm glad to hear you've had so much success with the drug court program. It sounds like that was pretty critical to you finding success going forward. In all of this, I mean, and I ask this question, and I always get different answers. I always ask, did at some point this whole process, did you hit like the lowest point? And the responses I've always gotten back are usually no. It's like multiple low points. It's multiple. It's like I think, and I don't think people understand that. You want to, maybe it's because we're, trained by movies or something that, the hero hits the lowest point and then but there's really just like a constant struggle of trying to make this work. And then you find the thing that works, you find the community, you find the program, you find, whatever it is. Would you say your experience was something similar to that?
Yes, there's multiple low points. My daughter passing away, losing my daughter again for the second time, my older daughter. The first time when she was 1, second time when, I don't even remember how old she was, 8, 9. my son living without power in our house for almost a year, sleeping in a vehicle, shooting up drugs while I'm pregnant.
How old was your son without power? Or when you were without power?
7, 8.
And what did he like? So I know that as a parent, I think back of my failures as a parent and go, man, this was terrible. I feel bad, or whatever it is. And then when I talk to my kids about it, they either don't remember it or like, oh, we thought that was great. Do you ever talk to your son about, remember that time we lived without power? And he was like, yeah, it was so fun, or whatever. Like, what's his take on that?
He thought we didn't make enough money to pay the power bill. So when I joined drug court, he went to all the NA meetings with me. He went to the Eugenia Center with me. He went everywhere with me. But he was just kind of not paying attention, I guess. And he thought I was doing that because I went to jail for shoplifting. And I've never, when I was using him, I tried to shield him. He wasn't shielded. We didn't have a trap house, but it was the next thing. So he wasn't shielded by any means. We didn't use in front of him, but we used in the bathroom when he was in the room. I drove with him around to go pick up drugs. So like I said, he wasn't shielded. And I've never shielded him since I've been clean. I've always been super open with him. I want him to know the effects of trying drugs, the effects of addiction. But yeah, he doesn't have any bad opinion about when we didn't have power.
It's just what he knew.
It's just what he knew.
So how long were you in the drug court program for?
About 2 years, a little over 2 years.
And, once you kind of committed and saw the results of committing to that, what happens after that?
Oh, just everything good. Drug court required me to get a job. I argued about that, but I got a job working as a cashier at Chevron.
And were you living with family members at this time, or were you living on your own?
I was living with my son's dad still. We still had a place together where we were paying rent. He was using.
So he's still in active addiction.
Yes.
You're
so
going
in
through this
separate
whole
rooms.
drug court thing. Okay.
So we're living under the same roof, but we're in separate rooms, like roommates. He finally moved back to the Tri-Cities, and he's clean now and doing great. But so I got a job. I've been at Chevron for almost 5 years, a little over 4 years. My daughter comes and stays with me during the summer. So I get that time with her. I go to my family's house all the time. After this, I'm going to go have lunch with my aunt. I got married. Oh, I had a son too while I was still in drug court. I forgot about that kid. Yes. I met somebody in NA and we had a kid together. And that's how that happened. We're friends. That's just how that happened. He's 3 now. And
maybe that's good because you're meeting somebody that.
Yeah.
As weird as the shared experience is, the shared experience can be edifying for both of you.
Yes.
To stick clean.
So Cameron is 3 now. And he's amazing. And so, everything. I graduated 3 years ago from drug court. Cameron was a few months old. I started dating somebody I had met in drug court. He's now my husband. We've been married almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years next month. I run the Chevron. My life is just, I'm so blessed. It's crazy. And so part of the reason I wanted to do this is so that people can see that you can be so low. You can make some really bad choices. That doesn't mean that has to be the rest of your life. It doesn't mean you have to struggle forever.
It's not hanging over your head.
Yeah.
And so now that you've just gone through this all this. What is your response to people that are currently in active addiction? How do you see yourself relating to I mean, it doesn't take much to walk around the community and realize that there's a lot of substance use, addictions, disorders, all sorts of stuff in the area. How do you respond to that? How do you, because we're going to look, you did the Christmas meal thing and we'll segue right into that, but what's your response to people that are currently dealing with addiction?
It's hard for me to have a response other than love because there's nothing I can say or do to get them out of it. They have to make that choice. So my response to them is just, I mean, I deal with a lot of people who come into my work, and my response is, if you want help, I know where to get you help. If you're hungry, I can feed you. If you're cold, I can help you be warm. I can't lecture them. I just try to share my story with them. I tell people all the time, like, look, I used to be homeless. I used to be where you're at. And look at me now, Like, I'm not bragging, but you can have this. But you have to make the choice. I guess that's all I can really say to them.
There's life after addiction.
Yes.
And your relationship now with your family. I mean, they've done so much for you while you were in addiction. It sounds like you're spending time with them now. What's that look like? How does that play out in your life and your kids' lives?
They're just so happy to have me back. My grandma could always tell by looking in my eyes when I was using, or when she had the clear Leah eyes, is what she would call them when I was clean. So to be able to give her those eyes, the clear eyes, all the time, to be able to go to her house when I want, to be able to spend time with my cousin, Alicia, whenever I want. I can't even describe it. It feels good. It makes me feel proud of myself, to know that they're proud of me, to know that they can trust me, for my children to have a relationship with them and be able to go to grandma's house for a holiday meal or for, Easter, or it's
pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing.
That's good. So Gather does a Thanksgiving meal and delivers tons of meals out in the community, and I think even over to East Los County. But we traditionally have had a Christmas, like basically the atrium's open for Christmas. People can come in and get a meal. Some of that stuff is still, like, I believe it was under construction, and we've had all this stuff going on. So what brought about you wanting to provide Christmas meals for the community?
So on Thanksgiving, I decided to work, and I like to cook. And since I wasn't going to be cooking for my family, I cooked just large portions and brought them to work and served about 40 people and ran out of food. Then I knew, after I saw how that went, that I wanted to do it for Christmas as well. I had mentioned it to a few people, and people had offered to donate and asked how they could donate or help. I asked my friends at the Gather if they did a Christmas thing or if they were going to. And since there wasn't going to really be anything, they got me in touch with Tris, and I was able to get several donations and help from you guys together. I just didn't want people to be hungry on Christmas. My customers that live on the streets that come in, I wanted them to have a hot meal like a lot of other people are going to be having on Christmas. I wanted people to eat. I wanted people to feel welcome.
What do you see going forward? Like, what do you want to do future-wise? Like, what's your passion? You want to continue to do this? Do you want to maybe expand, or do you want to...
I always told Brooke, if I didn't have the job I had, I wish I worked for the Gather. I want to be in that that line of work. But my job's also amazing. I want to do an Easter dinner. Every major holiday, I want to do a dinner from my store. I want to do a barbecue on the 4th of July.
Just develop community, develop that sort of service.
I just want to make it a regular thing.
Yeah. Do you find others stepping up to help you in that?
Yes.
I noticed that once you open a door to something, you find,
I had so much support and help, and people offer to help. I mean, I thought I could do it on my own. And I thought, since it's my idea and it's Christmas, I can't make other people come do this. Thank goodness people came to help, because there was no way in hell I could have done it on my own.
yeah.
Yes. And for the donations, everything. It wasn't a me thing. It was a community thing and a God thing. It was my idea, but that's it.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm going to do it on my own, or I don't want to ask people.
Yeah.
And you find out that Christmas, this is what people want to do. We opened gifts the night before or something, right? They find some way to work their tradition into it, but then this is what they want to do for Christmas. This is, I find that people are looking to serve. They just need opportunities in different commitments. Some people big commitments, some people, I can go serve food or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, that's great. And do you use that as a touch point to like where you work and stuff? We have a lot of people dealing with substance use. We also have a lot of homeless, all those issues. I imagine they come into your store often. Do you try to keep a open door and encourage people to get help, assistance?
Always.
And you partner. I mean, is that formal? Is it informal? Is it
both? Probably. There's a set of regular people from this area. We know a lot of the same people. So without using names, because things are confidential, I try to keep tabs on people. If I don't see somebody for a while, I get worried. I'll ask Brooke, have you seen them? It's definitely
Brooke
a partnership.
knows where everybody is.
Yeah, it's definitely a partnership I have with my friends. We all got to take care of each other, My door is always open at Chevron. I don't like when people take advantage, but they don't get kicked out if I feel like they're taking advantage of kindness. I talk to them about it, We are a gas station. We're not a shelter. So there's things that are allowed and things that aren't allowed. And so that needs to be pointed out a lot of times. If I could turn it into a shelter, I would, but I can't.
Yeah.
So
Boundaries. Now, one thing you touch on here that is so amazing is this network of people that it's this weird volunteer / informal whatever network of people across our area that if you don't know, you could find out, let me get back to you and I can find this, 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 and this. And it's amazing. It's in one sense, it's self-organizing. In another sense, these people are working for organizations that do this work or know somebody who knows somebody. There's always a few degrees of separation, but you can eventually find a solution or eventually find something for people to try to get help. And it's cool to see you participating in that network.
I always tell Brooke, she's the one that made me think of this, because she likes to tell me nice things. And I am like, wait, those are things about you. Like, what? So I always tell her we are the company that we keep. And that's how she makes me cry. That's how I feel about Brooke and a lot of my friends.
Yeah. Well, that's community is such an important part of not just finding recovery, but staying in recovery as well as helping others in recovery. It's real messy work, and the work you're doing is important. I think it's good to recognize that, and I think it's good to see what you've just listen to these stories. I listen to people talk about their lives, and I just can't help but be thankful that they're sitting across from me right now, because it could have gone so many different ways, and here you are. You exist, and you exist in a positive way in the community, and you're thinking creatively about ways that you can help others, and you're doing it. And that's amazing. So I'm so thankful you could be here and do this. This is great. I'm glad I got to meet you. I apologize for the tons of technical issues we appear to be having.
It's okay.
But that's just kind of the way it is. Anyways, thank you for your time. Thank you for all the work you're doing. And thank Brooke too for supporting you, and you supporting Brooke. These relationships are critical and important. So, Leah, I'm glad you're here, and thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor, honestly.
Thank you.